First of all, there's nothing like 20-foot waves to remind you of where human beings stand in the overall scheme of things. On dry land, we can kid ourselves that we've got Mother Nature nicely under control, but when you're out there, you're very aware of just who's boss. And that's really made me think that whether the human race survives or becomes extinct, it's not a moral question. The question is not, do we deserve to survive? It's purely a question of science and physics. If we carry on taking all the good stuff out of the earth and turning it into carbon dioxide, turning it into rubbish, turning it into plastic, and throwing it into our landfills and into our oceans, that is not going to work out so well for us. On a finite planet, what goes around comes around. I've also learned how little I really need to make me happy. There's a purity and a simplicity to life on the ocean. Provided that I've got enough to eat and enough to drink and I'm making a few miles in the right direction each day, then I'm a happy rower. I didn't always used to be like this. I used to have a very materialistic life. Before I became an ocean rower, I was a management consultant and really used to believe that money could buy you happiness. I used to want the big house and all the stuff to put into it. Now I find that not having much stuff gives me incredible freedom to think about the things that are really important in life, the things that really make me happy, things like friendships and relationships, and having a purpose and a passion in life, waking up every morning excited about what the day might bring. And the third thing is, sometimes people say to me, wow, you must be really brave to do what you do. And I wouldn't say that I am particularly brave. I am often petrified out there in the middle of the ocean. I'm completely on my own, don't have a chase boat, and I could be 2,000 miles from the nearest help. But I found that you can overcome your fears when you're even more afraid of something else. And what really scares me is that we might not wise up in time, that we might not realise what we're doing to our one and only planet in time to save the human race.
Hello and welcome to the Mindful Entrepreneur Podcast. We're your hosts, Tati and Gerry Jimenez.
Join us as entrepreneurs and brother and sister interview inspiring leaders in different fields to explore how they've achieved results and fulfillment. Let's get started as soul, passion, and business come together at The Mindful Entrepreneur. Roz Savage is the first and so far only woman to row solo across the world's big three oceans, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian. She holds 4 Guinness World Records and was appointed as a member of the Order of the British Empire in the Queen's birthday honors in Buckingham Palace for services to fundraising and the environment. She was named Adventurer of the Year by National Geographic in 2010. Her book, Stop Drifting, Start Rowing, One Woman's Search for Happiness and Meaning Alone in the Pacific, was published in 2013. Roz writes, speaks, and lectures on sustainability, courage, resilience, and change. Her audiences and clients include Yale, Cambridge, and Oxford universities, the U.S. Department of State, National Geographic, TED, Google, Disney, Hootsuite, and thousands of people across the globe. An ambassador for the United Nations Environment Program, she now combines her self-taught life skills with principles from neuroscience, psychology, personal development, and leadership theory to inform and inspire corporate audiences.
Hello, Game Changers. This is Gerry, founder of Vita Factor, where we help modern entrepreneurs strategize and grow their business.
I'm Tati, founder of The Genius Spot, where we support women in leading with confidence and living mindful and productive lives.
And today we have the very unique and dear guest, Roz Savage. So Richard Branson described her achievements as heroic, epic, inspiring, and historic.
And on a personal note, we had the good fortune of meeting Roz through her sister Viviana, who shared with us about the amazing friend you are. And so Roz, it's an honor to have you here with us. Thank you.
And it's such a pleasure to be with you. And I'm finding it a little bit spooky, the resemblance between the two of you and my very dear friend Viviana. But it's great. I feel like I've known you for a long time.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
So Roz, you used to be a management consultant and, as you said, who didn't really enjoy exercise. And then you became the first and only woman to row across 3 oceans solo. How did this come about?
It's not the most obvious career move, is it? There probably was some cause and effect between spending 11 years as a management consultant and rowing alone across oceans, seeming like a really good idea. It was really a combination of two big awakenings. The first one was realizing that I wanted to do something different with my life. At the time, that's all I knew. I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I had come to the conclusion that management consultancy was not it. So I needed to find something that felt more fulfilling, but I really didn't know what that was going to be. So then the second awakening was in my quest to find out the answer to the first question. I went and traveled around Peru for a few months. And as a result of what I saw there with the retreating glaciers and also spending time with the Peruvian Indians, the indigenous people there, starting to wake up to the need to have a healthier relationship between humans and nature, between people and planet. And having been completely environmentally oblivious up to that point, I came back to England from my time in Peru and started reading about indigenous culture, especially the Hopi tribe, and also reading about environmental issues. And the more I read, the more concerned I became, until I felt like I just had to do something to spread the word. But was really mystified as to what a burned out management consultant could do to contribute to the cause, until a series of meetings and conversations. And I wish I could say that I had the idea to row across oceans, but it was really one of those cases where the idea had me, where a crazy idea just popped into my head one day while I was really just minding my own business. And I think my heart knew immediately that it was exactly what I'd been looking for. But as so often happens, the head got in the way and started thinking of dozens of reasons why it was a ridiculous idea, not least of which was that I'd never really been to sea before. But as usually happens, eventually the heart won. And so I decided that's what I was going to do. I was going to row alone across oceans and use my adventures through my blogs and my talks and my books to raise awareness of our environmental issues and hopefully inspire other people to do something about them too.
Yeah, the ocean is so big, and so why the ocean specifically?
I was trying to find something that was unusual, that would be sufficiently attention-getting. And for reasons that rapidly became very clear, not that many people want to be alone on oceans.
No.
They are very big indeed. But for me, it seemed to be a perfect opportunity for me to combine these two burning passions for me at that point. The first one being, what am I capable of? I'd already done quite a few things since my departure from management consulting. I'd already done quite a few things that really scared me, and they'd actually gone okay. So I was really starting to spread my wings for the first time, now in my mid-30s, and wanted to find out what more I was capable of, how much more could I grow. And then secondly, it just seemed like the perfect way to have an environmentally low impact adventure that would be sufficiently unusual to catch people's attention. Although, as I say, this is really sort of after the fact rationalization. At the time, it was just like the idea, you know, it really did feel like the call to adventure. And I would have felt like I was betraying all this work that I'd done on myself up to that point if I'd said, oh, well, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. Let's just ignore it and hope it goes away. So yes, I received the call. I fought it for a while and then realized it actually did tick all the boxes for me.
Yeah, quite a transformation. Now, you mentioned that you had an environmental epiphany that led to that transformation. How have you seen it impact your everyday now?
Well, I think this is always the challenge from recovering management consultants. That you're like, where are my metrics? How do I know whether I succeeded or not? And I have in the past driven myself half crazy trying to come up with measurable results. And I think it's incredibly hard. I mean, I can look at how many miles I rode. I can look at how many media impressions I got. I can look at how many blogs I've posted, or how many comments I got on my blogs, or how many YouTube views I've had. But it's really only, I think I just had to know that I was giving it my all, that I was doing my best. It wasn't something that could be measured in numbers. Yeah. And so really the evidence I have is anecdotal, emails that people have sent to me saying, wow, I didn't know about all this plastic pollution in the oceans, or wow, I hadn't thought about the effects of rising seas on people living on small islands in the Pacific Ocean. And now that I am aware, this is how I've changed my behavior. And it's those emails that really warm my heart and make me feel that I did achieve something. But I think when we're in service to some cause greater than ourselves, we may even not live to see the tipping point be reached, but we just have to keep the faith that we were doing our bit to add the straws to one side of the scales, and that one day that tipping point will happen. There will have been a lot of people before me, and hopefully a lot of people after me who'll contribute to the cause, and that's what keeps me going. It's certainly not ego or the financial rewards. That's for sure.
Roz, just out of curiosity, how long has you crossed 3 oceans, but how long since you decided, okay, I'm going to leave my management consulting life behind and I'm going to go on this new adventure? How long was that time span?
It's a great question, because it's sometimes been described that I quit my high-flying job, and I really wasn't that high-flying, to go row across oceans, and it really wasn't that sudden. I quit my job in 2000. I went to Peru in 2003, and it was 2004 when I decided to row across oceans, and 2005 when I set out on my first voyage. And that time might look a bit blank on my CV, but actually it was a really, really valuable time for me, because I had to learn quite a few things, one of which was it's okay to fail. I'd almost been cursed by being really good at passing exams when I was at school. It was very easy for me to jump through other people's hoops. And you get to 21 and you graduate from university, I had a law degree from Oxford, and you look around going, okay, where's the next hoop? And suddenly, there are thousands of hoops in every direction. And it's so difficult to choose which direction to take. And also, part of that algorithm tends to be, what can I succeed at? And I think to have a failed career and also a failed marriage at around that time, to have some really pretty spectacular failures and realize that life goes on. And in fact, failures can be incredibly liberating and seriously educational. Yeah. It really gave me so much more room to maneuver, so many more options opened out in front of me. And I wasn't afraid to try things with no guarantee of success. And, I'm guessing that a lot of your entrepreneurial audience have faced this too, that they're like, yikes, how I want to try this thing. I feel called to do it, but how can I know I'm going to succeed? And this was actually a question that I would ask myself many, many times. I'm jumping ahead a bit here now, but on my first ocean crossing, I'd felt so called to do this, that I felt that it was all going to be rainbows and unicorns. It was all going to be wonderful. And it so absolutely wasn't. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. And there were so many times that I asked myself, can I do this? Can I do this? And my brain would go, oh, okay, let's check the memory banks and see if we have any evidence that we can do this. And it would check the memory banks and go, uh-oh, yeah, we have no evidence because we've never tried this before. So no, it's entirely possible we can't do this. And it took me a while to realize it was a completely bogus question. And all I had to do was keep showing up and keep trying. Every day, just get on that rowing seat and keep sticking my oars in the water. And it was only by keeping on doing the thing that I would ever discover whether or not I could do it. So I hope that feels relevant to your audience, that, you know, if we can really stop ourselves from even trying things if we want any guarantees of success, because we're not going to get them.
That is brilliant and very much on point with our audience and with the whole entrepreneurial journey. So thank you for that. And speaking of overcoming the fear, you recently taught a course in Courage at Yale, and you're teaching, correct? Still there? Mm-hmm.
I was just there for one semester. I will probably go back at some point. At the moment, I'm teaching in many other places around the world. I've got a really hectic few months coming up in a really exciting way, doing some teaching in Oxford and China and India and other conference speaking. But yes, you're exactly right. I was teaching a class on courage.
So how do you define courage?
Well, here's the funny thing. When I was doing the things that other people said, wow, you're courageous, I think they were sort of going, brackets, stupid. I certainly was much more aware of my own fear than of my own courage. I think courage is so often in the eye of the beholder, and the person actually doing the thing is just like, wow, I'm really scared, but this thing is really important to me. And really the central point of my courage class, so this is like a whole semester boiled down into 10 seconds, is that when your motivation is bigger than your fear, then you can act courageously. So if you know the thing that you want to do, but you're not managing to actually make yourself do it, you need to find a way to pump up your motivation or decrease your fear. And I think you can raise your motivation by just saying, well, why is that thing important to me? And then why is that important to me? And why is that important to me? Until you've got such a massively powerful reason why that you simply can't not do the thing, or find a way to handle the fear. And I think often fears are our heads getting in the way. You know, our ego goes, oh, no, let's not try anything new because we've got this far through life just fine. If we try something new, it might kill us, or, you know, or we might lose our friends, our social standing, our income, any of these things. So the ego tends to be very conservative about what it's willing to try. But I think if we ask ourselves the question, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like against all of these fears, what's the worst case scenario? And can I handle that? I think once we really shine a spotlight on the scary bits, usually they just sort of shrink. I think it's the fears that we don't look at that tend to loom so large. So the way that I was already massively motivated, partly by, you know, my own desire to grow as a person and partly with the environmental mission. So the motivation side wasn't hard for me, but I still had an awful lot of fear to deal with. And I think financial fear especially can undermine enthusiasm and gumption more than almost anything else. In the early days after I left my salaried job, it was the financial collywobbles that nearly sent me running back into full-time employment. But I did find that I was able to survive on less money than I'd thought I needed before. Not having to buy power suits or expensive vacations really helped a lot. or all those other sort of treats that we give ourselves when we're not doing a job that works for us. You know, we often feel like we have to pamper ourselves and reward ourselves for feeling so miserable so much of the time. And when you actually find something that you just love to do that really makes your soul sing, you don't need all those treats because you're just loving what you're doing. So even though there were a few financial wobbles, I also found that something weird happens. There's that fantastic Goethe quote that I'm going to have to ask you to look up and put in the show notes because I'm going to get it completely wrong. But it's about the magic in boldness, that when you actually go out and just decide that you're going to make the thing happen, when you commit to it, that life just shows up with all of these resources and these helpers and even the money to help make it happen. It's almost like this beginner's luck that's letting you know that you're on the right track. So I'm not saying that there weren't times that I really felt like I was right on the edge of the cliff and about to fall off, but I'm still here after all of that. And I'm just so glad that I, for whatever reason, and I had multiple motivations, even negative ones can sometimes work. Like, I really don't want to go back to the office. So even though this sucks, it sucks less than going back to the office.
I think many of us can relate to that.
And of course, I was fortunate in that once I actually got out on the water, it's logistically very, very difficult to quit in the middle of an ocean. It's not like you just catch the bus home. You know, you really have to keep on going. But I think that we can all create that. I find that going out and telling everybody what I'm intending to do is really helpful in, I mean, even if they don't actually care whether I do it or not, I've sort of created some pressure on myself that just for, you know, sheer sort of self-respect and pride, that I've got to follow through on what I've said I'm going to do. So I think we can create these accountabilities and these pressures in our own minds that make us just, you know, keep on going. And again, I think another thing about the ocean rowing that also applies to the entrepreneurial life is that so much of success is just not quitting. You know, just keep on going. And there was one time when my first attempt on the Pacific, when I did have to quit. I ended up in a situation when the boat ran into a storm, it was capsizing more than it should have been. I lost some equipment. You know, there are times when things are obviously just not going your way, and that to quit is the sensible thing to do, that you need to call a halt, step back, regroup, rethink some things, re-equip in whatever way, shape or form is necessary, and then get out there and try again. So I'm not saying, you know, just keep running into that brick wall blindly. That's not what I mean. But I do think that ultimately an awful lot of success is due to just not giving up.
Now, great point there. And I gotta admit, what you've done is very bold. And it seems to us that for someone to even consider an adventure of that magnitude, it's gotta be already a little of courage in them. Would you agree?
I suppose at that stage in my life, I had taken a few leaps that had scared me. And they'd gone all right. And so, rightly or wrongly, I'd sort of developed this faith that things would turn out okay. And I think this is one of those quirks of human psychology, that when we believe, I suppose I ought to say, like, within reason, you know, I'm not talking about stupid extreme examples here, but when we believe that we're lucky people, when we believe that things will work out in our favor eventually, and if they haven't worked out yet, it just means we haven't stuck with it for long enough yet. I think when that's our belief system, that sort of growth mindset, rather than the fixed mindset. So by that I mean, so this Carol Dweck and her research, that if we believe that we've got the resources, if we've got the tenacity, if we've got the determination and the intelligence to keep on working at a problem until we succeed, then that is much more valuable to us than just believing that we're God's gift to the world. It's much more about having faith in the process than just believing that we will be successful because we deserve to be, because life doesn't always work out that way. But really having faith in our ability to cope with the tough times. And that's something that I was starting to develop before I got out onto the oceans. And then something that really went up a gazillion fold once I got out onto the water, that I just faced challenge after challenge after challenge of storms, of broken equipment, of failed expeditions, of online criticism, of, you know, just so many things that at the time felt like the worst thing ever. But looking back now, I can see that, I suppose what I'm saying in essence is that maybe you just need to have that little seed of self-belief to start out, but then the rest of the courage comes by the doing. I used to think courage was the prerequisite. I used to think, I'd love to live that kind of a life. I'd love to go have an adventure, but I'm not really courageous. I used to think you had to have the courage first, but it just doesn't work that way. The courage I think we've all got courage. In some of us, it's latent. In some of us, it's started to be realized. But it's only by doing the things that require courage that we find out. I could sit on the sofa for the rest of my life and not find out whether I'm courageous, because sitting on the sofa doesn't take that much courage. So I think we have to just get out there and see what happens.
like Nike, just do it.
Exactly. Yes. And it is going to be scary, but hey, if it's not scary, it's not courage, it's just fearlessness, which is obviously often a very close relative of stupidity. So fear is normal. It's just being afraid of the right things, I suppose. And most failures are not fatal. Some of mine could have been. Yeah, there are a few shapes, but mostly failure is not fatal.
Hey, and before you leave, both the Genius Spot and Be the Factor want to thank you, our awesome audience, for being part of our podcast. And if you found this episode of value, please share it with your friends and loved ones so they too can join the Mindful Entrepreneur.